Bonjour! Today let's conjugate the French verb faire, which means to do or to make, in 5 different tenses. Okay, let's have a look at the verb faire, which means to do or to make. Now, I have chosen faire because it's a highly irregular verb, but I wanted you to have a look at it in the chart, next to each other. The present tense, we are going to see the passé composé, then the imperfect, the futur, and the conditionnel. So have a look at the chart and let's see what it sounds like. Now, let's start with the present tense. Faire, to do or to make. So we are going to learn how to say I make or I am making. And this is the present tense. Now remember that we don't say I am making, I am making. In French we say I make. So I make is je fais. Je fais. Now remember that it means to do as well. So I do, I am doing. Tu fais. Il fait. Elle fait. On fait. Nous faisons. Vous faites. Ils font. Elles font. Now, faire in the present tense, this is what we've just done, is really hard because for vous, it hasn't got EZ at the end, and it's the only verb where this happens, okay? So you've got to be, to be, actually, it happens in to be as well. So you've got to be really aware of that. Another thing I'd like you to be really aware of, it's what does the nous form look like? Nous faisons. The reason why I'm going to ask you to remember that, because it's going to be useful when we're going to conjugate in the imperfect tense. But let's do the passé composé now. The passé composé is formed of the auxiliary verb to have or to be. In that case, for faire, it is to have. So we need to know how to say I have, you have, he has, and so on, plus the past participle of faire, which is fait. Now, in order to say I have done or I did, because that's exactly what we are trying to translate with the passé composé, we do it this way. J'ai fait, I have done, okay? And that means equally, I did. So remember, in order to say I did, you must say I have done in French. There is no such a thing as I did, okay? So, I have done, j'ai fait. Tu as fait. Il a fait. Elle a fait. On a fait. Nous avons fait. Vous avez fait. Ils ont fait. Elles ont fait. Okay, that's fairly simple once you understand what the past participle of that verb is. In that case, it's faire or fait, fait for the past participle, and whether it's conjugated with the verb to be and to have or to have. Okay, now let's have a look at the imperfect tense. Now, remember what I asked you to remember. Remember what I asked you to remember? Yes, the nous form of faire is nous faisons. The reason why I asked you to do that is because you're going to use the stem of nous faisons and you're going to start this in the imperfect and add the imperfect endings. So let's have a look at the stem of nous faisons. It's F-A-I-S. So we use that for je. So we are going to learn now in the imperfect tense, learn how to say I was doing or I used to do. Remember, though in English you can say both, in French you do it only one way, and this is this way. Je faisais. See what we've done? We're using the stem of the nous form of the present, and we're putting it into the imperfect. So, je faisais. What you need to know is what are the endings of the imperfect. For je, it's est. For tu, it's est, and so on. So, have a look. Je faisais. Tu faisais. Il faisait. Elle faisait. On faisait, nous faisions, vous faisiez, well done, il faisait, elle faisait. Okay, so conjugating a verb in the imperfect tense is not as hard as you think as long as you know the stem, which comes from the nous version of the present tense, and the endings of the imperfect. Let's have a look now at the future tense. Now, the future tense has a different stem completely, and you must, especially if it's a third group verb, you must know this by heart. For faire, it is faire, F-E-R, okay? So, how do you say I will do? Because, or I will make, because that's what we are trying to do. Je ferai, I will do. Tu feras. Il fera. Elle fera. On fera. Nous ferons. Vous ferez. Ils feront. Elles feront. Très bien. So we've conjugated the verb, the same verb faire, and we in the future tense, I will do. Now remember, we don't have such a thing as will, okay? It's all about the stem and the endings, which is est, a, on, est, on, which by the way, if you look at the second column, passé composé, j'ai, tu as, il a, elle a, nous avons, ils ont, it's the same ending as the future tense. So you've got to be clever about that. There is a pattern. Now, let's have a look at the last tense, which is a conditional verb. Now, you're going to tell me, what is the conditional? Well, in English, it's when you say I would. So, I would do or I would make. Now, how do you do that? You take the stem of the future tense, which is faire, and you add the endings of the imperfect tense. Whoa! Now, have a look at the imperfect tense ending. A, ion, ie, okay? So we've got that. Now, what you need to do now is you take the beginning of the future tense, there you go, faire, F-E-R, and add the endings of the imperfect. And then you have a would, conditional tense. So, je ferai, I would do. Tu ferais, you would do. Il ferait. Elle ferait. On ferait. Nous ferions, vous feriez, il ferait, elle ferait. Right, okay, we've conjugated the verb in 5 different tenses. Now, I'd love to present the chart to you because it shows you patterns and it shows you that after all, it's not that hard to conjugate a verb in the third group, okay? Now, have a look at the lessons on the first group and the 5 comparative tenses, and they are really easy to conjugate, especially when you get the endings of the verb. Now, remember, there is a support guide available to this lesson at learnfrenchwithalexa.com, my website. And also, why don't you subscribe to Learn French with Alexa and leave a comment? I would love to hear from you. Au revoir, à bientôt. Bisous, bisous. Salut.